And then
When is the extra PowerPoint video?
You mean in mine?
yes.
This morning maybe? Or maybe like after lunch? Okay.
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. This is the DISATS lecture. We're given by me and two Jets. Here's a little overview. We're going to review what is a DISAT because I know that there's a few different skill levels here. So just a review so that everyone knows, what I'm talking about and we're all on the same page. Then I'm going to talk about some of the DISATs on the topic that you're likely to run into. I know this was covered in a few other lectures, but just kind of a review of that. Some tips for debating DISATs, and then how to be AF against DISATs. So I know a lot of you guys probably went over this, but disadvantage is something that the plan causes that is bad in its simplest form. It's a description of what's going on now, how the plan affects it, and why the plan affecting that thing is bad. And you weigh them against the advantages of doing the plan so that you can compare the reasons why doing the plan is good versus why doing the plan is bad based off of what's going on now. So I want you all to open up the China DISAT on the GDI website and look at me as soon as you have it up and ready to navigate. Deontay's got it. Right? Yeah.
Monty can move. I'm not sure if I'm tweeting this up to the website. I don't care.
Alright. Does everyone have the DISAT up?
No.
Alright. Raise your hand if you have it. It's where all the other evidence.
Evidence and lecture.
Yeah. It's just the Chinese.
Okay, so whenever I...
Alright, does everyone have it now? Okay. Can you look on with someone next to you? Or okay. It's not like you're gonna have to be doing anything, it's just for explanation. Alright. Everyone got it? Good. Alright. The first part of the DISAT is uniqueness. This is what's going on in the status quo. If you click on the heading, I think it's called like 1NC China Econ, the first card is the uniqueness card. It's a card from 2012 that is describing what's going on right now in Latin America. And that thing that's what is going on now, which is what the DISAT is going to talk about, is the fact that Chinese influence in Latin America is growing. And this thing, the uniqueness, is what the plan interrupts by happening. So by the U.S. engaging with Latin America, it will hurt China's influence. That's a different part of the DISAT, but basically you need to know what is happening now for the plan to affect something bad.
Alright, so now we have the link. The link is...
Yeah.
Are we really going this fast?
You are going pretty fast.
Alright.
I bet that's the first time you've ever been told that.
What
is-
She didn't finish copying, he didn't finish copying.
No one finished.
Oh, for copying the slides. I didn't think you had to write down everything.
It helps them retain it.
Yeah.
We should write on paper.
That would be even slower. You'd be waiting for a minute.
We have a question.
With this side, can I basically go and have a baby with it other than the way that we installed another way? Is that possible?
What do you mean another way?
Like, with this side, I go out and talk to you right now. Can I remember?
Well, it has to be relevant to the plan.
Right, I mean, but I'm
Feel good.
I'm saying it's great, but I'm like, when you that is not, opinionated, but something that's a little more strategic.
I mean, yeah, as long as you have a link to the plan, then the dissent makes sense. At the camp, you're only going to be debating with the dissents we give you. But if in the regular season you have a dissent that affects the plan, or the plan affects the dissent, then you can look at it. Right. Do all of you have a copy down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give it to you afterwards, but yeah.
All right, so next part of the dissent is the link, which I personally think is the most important part of the DA because it implicates what you're talking about is happening now and how the plan is related to that. So if you don't win that the plan is related to whatever is happening now, then it's entirely irrelevant what your dissent is about. So if you look in the file, right below the first uniqueness card, I think it's the FAM 10 card. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Fancy.
Okay. So this evidence says the plan increases U.S. influence in the region, which hurts China's influence. Can anyone explain to me how the plan increases U.S. influence in the region?
Because it's the U.S. Well, you mean the app?
Yeah.
Like the Cuba oil app. Well, it's like they're interacting with Cuba, so they're interacting in Latin America.
Okay, so in the status quo, we just talked about uniqueness, right? Who's interacting with Cuba, Latin America now?
China.
China. All right. And so after the plan, who's interacting with Latin America?
America.
All right. So our linked argument is that the plan prevents the status quo from continuing, which is that China equals Latin America. Now it's America equals Latin America. So right below that we have influence in China that China has in the region interrupted by the plan. So Latin American countries like the U.S. more than they like China. So what happens after that?
We'll find out once you all finish copying it down if that is necessary.
So sad.
Like you just rolled out of bed.
I did just roll out of bed. That's funny.
There you go, right there.
I'm actually full of vitamin C.
Is everyone copied it down?
Yeah.
No.
You still copying?
Yeah, I'm
Aubrey. Okay, first Delphina.
You guys are just so enthusiastic about this. I sense
Did
it.
you guys
You
put
guys are
style?
excited to teach us. I sense it.
where's the style?
No, did you guys put style in the PowerPoint because you guys were just like so tired about it?
No, we're so excited to teach people.
I definitely sense it. Right?
We're
I
so
sense that
excited.
excitement.
It just sounds like. And now we're gonna talk about the link. Well, here's the link.
Will's a slow start in the morning, but once you get him going, there's no stopping.
It's only a little bit better.
Hey, you said your PowerPoint was super exciting.
It gets better.
It gets better yet.
Yeah, so y'all's PowerPoint is excited for yourself.
We would see if you guys copy down slides quicker.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk about the internal link, and this is the part of the dissent that gets from how the plan affects the status quo to why we care. So it connects what's going on in the status quo, the effect that the plan has. It's almost like an extra link that gets you from what the plan does to something that's more important. So in the China dissent, the card right under the link basically explains that currently ties allow for China to have a strong economy through trade with Latin America. But if the U.S. butts in, then China will have less economic ties, which causes their economy to collapse because it's a key developing region for investment. So if the U.S. is, trading with Latin America and really getting some Latin America love, then Latin America will love China less, which means that it hurts their economy because, they can't trade with them as much. You have 30 seconds to finish copying down.
Lovely.
Wait, he's on. He's really on it.
Yeah, I know, but if they have a lab.
Can anyone tell me why China's economy would collapse as a result of the plan?
Because they
or why their economy would be hurt.
because they wouldn't be doing the trading anymore, it would be America. So that hurts their economy because they're not doing that income anymore.
What did you just describe?
The empire.
Alright, we're moving on.
All right, the impact. If you guys remember the flowing lecture we had yesterday, you guys remember at the top of the 2NC I did like an impact overview, you know? So this is where I came from. We had our impact. So we, Flora?
Okay.
Okay. The Flora just said, as a result of the plan, China's economy goes down, right? So what's the impact? The impact is the bad thing that happens, and in this case, it's the economy collapsing. In the China DA, it says economic stagnation from a lack of trade ties in Latin America means that their leaders are going to want to divert attention, and so they're going to want to start a war. So if you look in the file, this is like,
Royal time.
yeah, explicitly pointed out in the Royal 10 card, which says that during times of economic decline, people are unhappy, right? People are generally unhappy when there's like no money and like, you know, they can't get food. So the leaders of the country try to shift focus away from that by starting a war. And there's a statistical correlation between economic declines and the outbreak of conflict happening. So, does everyone understand what the impact of the DISAD is? What's the impact of the DISAD?
War.
No, the impact to everything is war.
The impact of DISAD is
Nuclear war?
The bad thing that happened.
yeah, it's economic decline.
Okay, economic decline. Does anyone want to tell me how we get to economic decline? Not Florida.
Because like we're crowding out China's influence in Latin America, therefore they can't trade with Latin America, which is the major trading partner. Therefore their economy decline, and there's statistical link between economic decline and war.
Alright. Did everyone get that?
Yeah.
Everyone generally follow that train of thought? Alright.
What's the first one?
Alright, let's review. So, what is a DISAD? It's just the reason the plan is bad, it's a disadvantage to the plan, hence DISAD. What are the components of a DISAD? Well, we just went over them. What's going on now is the uniqueness. What the plan does to interrupt what's going on now is the link. The internal link is what the plan affects to get to something we care about, and the impact is why the status quo is a good thing. Are there any questions thus far?
Alright, someone tell me what's happening right now.
Like,
Yes, and for this DISAD, what's happening right now?
In this they're saying that the angle is bad.
That who?
Oh, so I thought you were talking about the picture and stuff.
That says angels are bad?
That's
No, yeah, okay, so we were talking about the China DA.
China just said is that the reason why China just said it's so bad is because first of all China wants to start a nuclear war.
No.
Not why the China DISAD is bad. What is going on now?
Yeah.
What is the uniqueness for the DISAD?
Oh, because we want to start trade with Latin America and it would.
We want what's happening now.
I was just gonna say that. China.
China's expanding into Latin America.
That's what I was going to say. That's why I said
Sorry. That might be. Alright, does anyone want to say what the link is? China is expanding in Latin America.
Going causes U.S. expansion in Latin America and economic
Okay, how does the plan do that?
It causes American drilling.
We drill with who? Okay, cool. So what happens as a result of that?
China's
China's
expanding.
Taiwan.
I don't know
Don't
that.
Please don't.
China's economy.
China's crowded out and thus they can't
Alright, now
trade
what's that
with
called? What
Latin
part of
America.
the DISAD is that?
That's
The
impact. Wait, the
No,
internal
link.
link.
And then the economic decline in China is the impact.
Is the impact. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Alright, we're all on the same page? Good.
Alright, so there are a couple different types of DISADs. The one that we just discussed is called the sphere of influence DA. So remember when we talked about the uniqueness, we were like, China is expanding into Latin America. That's their sphere of influence. You know, they're kind of controlling Latin
This is
America
like
now.
for that. Okay, this is just a preview.
Oh,
of
this
what
is
we're
pretty.
about to do.
Okay. Well.
These are what we're about to talk about right now.
All right. Yeah, so in the context of the China DA, China is kind of controlling Latin America now. That's their sphere of influence. And the U.S. is trying to encroach upon that sphere. So it's important to note that there are...
Can you explain sphere of influence?
So a sphere of influence is like the general geographical area where a country has a lot of trade, has a lot of influence, has a lot of diplomatic ties. So can anyone think of one of America's sphere of influences?
Japan and South Korea.
Yeah, we have a couple. I don't know if you guys haven't heard of the South Korea Free Trade Agreement, or we have like a nuclear umbrella there. We have a lot of trade deals there. East Asia in general, that is one of our spheres of influence. Can anyone else think of a sphere of influence that we
Technically Latin.
pull
Yeah,
up?
technically Latin America. But
Yeah, to some degree, you know. With like Mexico, we have a lot of free trade agreements. You know, we engage in bilateral crime, border patrol, drug trafficking. You know, kinds of.
You think of any other land masses to the east of the U.S.? Europe. Thank you. We have a lot of trade with Europe. We have a lot of alliances there. We have a large presence diplomatically, in that area, which is kind of one of our spheres of influence.
You guys heard of NATO?
yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's one of our,
North Atlantic.
one of our ways of extending our sphere of influence. So, as you guys know, there are many countries in Latin America. There are many regions of the world where we can have spheres of influence that we've all talked about, and the plan can disrupt those in any number of ways. So, while the China DA is talking about Latin America, the plan, interrupts Cuba specifically, right? It's all entirely possible that can happen with Russia, Brazil, Europe. It's not just China who's expanding into Latin America now.
Yeah.
Russia is also expanding into Latin America now. Brazil is expanding into Latin America now. Europe is expanding into Latin America now, right? And so the plan trades off with any one of those countries. And so we can recreate that same scenario that we created with China, like we can with Russia, Brazil, or Europe. So can anyone give me the layout of a Brazil sphere of influence meeting? Henry.
So Brazil is expanding into Latin America now. Plan causes the U.S. to expand into Latin America, driving Brazil out. Brazil's economy is key to the global economy, and by them being cut out of Latin America, their economy collapses, and that leads to Brazil.
Yeah. Did everyone here happy, Henry? Yeah, I'm probably gonna invite yeah, so in that same way, you can construct any number of DAs with any number of countries. I mean, you can't just make up a country and just have the DA. There's a reason why we have an evidence packet. There's evidence to substantiate those claims. The impact doesn't always have to be the economy either. There. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you want to stay with the economy or?
Yeah, let's just for the purpose of this. Okay. The next type of disad is the spending disad. It discusses the fiscal ramifications of the plan, and there's basically two types. The first is a fiscal discipline type argument, which is that basically the government should not be spending money like willy-nilly, like basically the Tea Party's complaints with everything that's going on right now. So an example of how this would look on the topic would be, right now the U.S. is reining in spending with things like this sequester. Does everyone know what sequestration was, where we just cut a lot of money out of, the budget? But the plan spends a lot of money right after the sequester, which hurts the economy because it makes it look to investors like we're just gonna, spend our money on something that's, not relevant to us, but just kind of give it to other countries. And as we discussed with the China disad, this could have an economic decline causes war type impact. So just that it signals to other countries that we're willing to spend a bunch of money on something irrelevant, and that hurts investor confidence in the U.S. The second type of disad would be a trade-off disad. And this argues that there's a trade-off between things that need to be funded. So basically how this would look is something will be funded now, but if the plan gets funded, then that item will be cut because there's not enough space in the budget for both of them. And that item that would be cut is a good thing. For example, for the past few years, the F-35, a plane that helps the military, has kind of been on the chopping block. But if we funded something new, if we, then cut it, it would be bad for combating enemies. And I kind of forgot to put this in there, but one of the key phrases with the trade-off dissent is chopping block. That kind of means that it's the program has fallen under a lot of scrutiny, and it's the next thing to be cut. You can't really, trade-off dissents are normally something that's about to be cut, or has a very high risk of being cut. It's not going to be like, funding for all social services is not going to ever be on the chopping block. It's typically going to be something that is kind of perceived as wasteful spending, and something else might upset the balance that's going on in Congress and cause the program to be cut. One of the big caveats here is you have to make sure that the plan actually spends money for either of these things to be true. So the Cuba app just allows for drilling with Cuba. It doesn't spend money on anything. So the spending dissent wouldn't make much sense. But if you were debating an app that talked about how we should give money to, Venezuela and social programs or something like that, then you would have a greater chance of winning a link.
So when we were talking about possible apps, I think at the end of the last lecture, we talked about the Cuba embargo app. Does anyone remember someone brought up the Cuba embargo?
Yeah, it's just to get rid of the.
Is that linked to the spending dissent?
No.
Why not?
Because you're not spending money, you're just getting
Alright.
the embargo.
Who wants to tell me the uniqueness for the fiscal discipline DA? What's happening now?
We have fiscal discipline, or we're like getting better at fiscal discipline.
How are we getting better at fiscal discipline?
Deficit is in decline. Like the economy,
It's like a very
the
specific
economy is
word.
good now.
There's a word in here that you should be using.
Sequester.
Right.
Yes.
I think, does everyone know what the sequester is? Any confused? I feel, okay. You don't, okay. So a couple months ago, the government, or the Congress was like, we are going to cut like some $400 billion from government spending, right? That was the sequester. It was like really publicized, like a big controversy. And so in the status quo, we're cutting a lot of funding now. The government is not spending money, we're just cutting a lot of programs. What does the plan do? Spends money, all right? And so what does that tell investors?
It's no longer following the sequester, it's like starting to invest in stuff that may or may not help the economy.
Exactly. And so investors will start pulling out stocks, bonds, they're going to lose confidence in the economy, and then what happens? All right.
What would it do?
Wait, so what's the internal link of the fiscal discipline DA? All right. Anyone else want to say it? What's the internal link to the fiscal discipline DA?
It hurts investor confidence.
Well, that's kind of the link. What do investors do?
Investors will pull out their money.
Right. You were basically like half of it, but all right. Do you think you guys have a general understanding of fiscal discipline DA?
Yes.
All right. The trade-off DA, what's the uniqueness?
The whatever the item that is getting cut is on the chopping block now.
What's the chopping block?
It's about to be cut like in Congress.
Right. So in this example, the military produces a plane called the F-35, and so a lot of people don't think we really need it. It's like, but we still continue to fund it because it's like whatever. But on the chopping block, means it's most likely going to be cut. So what happens when the plan comes along?
It trades off the funding for
Yeah. So they'll definitely cut it if we spend money.
Right. So if we need to spend money on, something in Cuba or something, then screw the F-35. We can get rid of that and fund this. Can anyone think of a reason? What's the internal link? No, we didn't talk about it. I don't think we really talked about it. So can someone think of an internal link?
The internal link is basically that they're spending money that can be spent on someone that's more important versus spending on something that we do not need. We have F-30 all everywhere. Like we don't need.
Well, see, that's an answer to the dissent. That's an answer to the dissent. What's the internal link? So what happens if we cut F-35s?
Then we have money.
Yeah. The
Military weaker.
And then,
Yeah, military is weaker.
Okay.
And the impact is that. And can anyone think of an impact why the military being weaker is bad?
It's bad to
Yeah. Okay. Generally, we got it. All right. And then what happens at the end?
We got it.
nuclear war.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So now we have a relations DA. As you know, America has a lot of diplomatic relations with almost every country in the world, 195 some sorts. And a lot of times our relationship is like that we want to punch some countries in the face and vice versa. More often than not, they want to punch us in the face. So this is how our actions affect our relations with other countries. It's kind of like the sphere of influence DA, but not real. So we have an example right here. U.S.-Colombia relations are doing well right now. What kind of argument is that? Uniqueness. Okay. If the plan increases engagement with Venezuela, let's just say the plan is to give money to Venezuela, it makes Colombia hate us. Now, there's two things there. There's a link and the internal link. What's the link?
The plan, yeah, the plan increases engagement with.
All right, and then what's the internal link?
It will make Colombia hate us.
And the impact is?
The U.S.-Colombia relations will deteriorate.
All right, can anyone think of a reason why U.S.-Colombia relations are good?
They've been asking for.
Right. Colombia has like kind of a cocaine problem, and U.S. involvement to some degree has lessened trafficking, death from cocaine, drug-related deaths. So we need a good relationship with Colombia to make sure that happens. If we, come into Venezuela and they get pissed off at us, we can't cooperate with them, and then they send like tons of cocaine to the United States, and everyone dies of cocaine. So that's not just limited to Colombia. Remember when we talked about the sphere of influence DA? We have Brazil, we've got Russia, we've got Europe. So there's any number of countries that what we do in Latin America could piss them off. Can anyone think of another country who might be angry at us for expanding into Latin America?
China.
Right.
North Korea.
Brazil.
Well, I don't know North Korea.
North Korea hate us.
Yeah,
Not for that, not for that.
Hate us too much.
Yeah, they hate us for anything, not really Latin America specific stuff. So someone make a relations DA with China. Give me uniqueness, link, internal link, and impact.
So, uniqueness is U.S. isn't expanding to Latin America?
No. We're talking about a relations DA.
Okay, so, China's expanding to Latin America?
No, it's yes.
The U.S.-China relations right now is.
Okay, that's uniqueness. Someone give me the link.
Right.
You can have another chance. Link.
Okay, so, expanding to Latin America, it's not China.
Perfect. Internal link. Well, I guess that was the link.
Yeah, that's the internal link. The link is like the plan increases engagement in Latin America.
And then that is about China, and then can someone think of an impact to U.S.-China relations?
Taiwan War.
China gets mad at Earth's economy, they retaliate with nuclear war.
Perfect. Whatever anyone asks you what the impact of something is, do not respond with nuclear war. Trust me, that does not answer their question.
It's what causes that.
What causes
nuclear
that
war.
nuclear war?
That's what they want to know.
nuclear war, to explain the rest of it.
All right, so if someone asks you the impact, don't be like, well, the uniqueness is, and then you'll look like a noob. You need to first just like talk about what is the thing that causes that nuclear war. So with the China econ dissad, what is the thing that causes that nuclear war? Or with the sphere of influence dissad, sorry.
Economic decline.
Right, that's what they want to know when they ask you what the impact is. If they ask you the impact to the U.S.-China relations dissad, it's
Economic.
yeah, whatever the impact that you ended up reading was.
It doesn't necessarily have to be U.S. economic decline. I think we got like fixated on that. U.S.-China relations can be good for solving global warming, to solve like Taiwan War, any number of things. All right. So people generally understand relations DAs? Cool.
Okay. All right. Politics dissads. Deal with it. Argues that the plan has a negative political implication. Basically, what's going on now, the uniqueness for the dissent is that an agenda item will pass, but the plan is politically divisive for a number of reasons. Like, let's think about the Cuba half. How many people do you think in Congress would be upset if after 50-something years we started giving like help to Cuba and started cooperatively drilling with them? A lot of people would be mad, especially people who are on the right side of the aisle because they hate communism and etc. But and so when something politically divisive on the agenda happens, then it means that other things don't really happen. So if you think about it this way, if you and your mom and dad are talking about you going to the movies, but then you don't feed your dog in the morning. Right, your parents won't let you go to the movies because you didn't feed your dog because it angered them, so they don't want to do something that you like. That's kind of, similar to the politics dissent. It argues that the agenda item won't pass because the plan happens, and that item is good. Key phrase you're going to have to learn for the politics dissent is political capital. Now, who can give me like a one-sentence explanation of what that is? Ty.
It's basically like Obama's cash for Congress.
Yeah, sure. It's his leverage with Congress to get what he wants. So if Obama has political capital, then it means he can, talk to Congress, have negotiations, and they'll listen to him because he has kind of like a stockpile of political goodwill that, once he, does something to anger Congress, then it means that they won't listen to him as much because he just did something that they don't like.
There's a politics DA on the website that you downloaded the China DA from. If you guys want to follow, if you want to look at that and kind of follow along with what we're talking about.
Yeah. So the dissent, well, if you guys are pulling it up, and if you're not, it's not the worst thing in the world. But you guys,
politics DA.
right? You should probably pull it up at some point in the next few days. But right now, the immigration reform is the highest thing on the agenda. So right now, we're arguing that, has anyone looked at the dissent, prior to today?
Prior to asking you at 15 seconds ago?
Yeah. You have?
Yeah.
Okay, can you explain, so what is the impact to the dissent?
Was it immigration? The immigration reform won't pass, right?
Sorry, that's the uniqueness. What's the impact?
Well, econ decline.
Econ decline. Oh, good. We're getting to that again. Basically, the argument is that immigration reform is good for our economy because it means more workers will come to it. And if the economy declines, then it causes war, as we've discussed ad nauseum. What would the uniqueness for the immigration reform be? Anyone?
Immigration will pass.
Good. What is the link for the immigration dissent?
The plan causes Obama to lose political capital.
Good. And
what does that mean for Obama? Why does the plan cause Obama to lose political capital?
Because the plan's unpopular. Plans are unpopular.
Alright, so we agree the plan is unpopular, so why is that related to Obama?
Because people in Congress don't like what he's doing. They're not going to let him pass immigration right now that he wants to pass.
Alright, so you remember the dog example, right? If your parents are angry with you for something you did, and they're not going to help you out. So, if people don't like what Obama's doing, they're not going to help them out with immigration reform. Does everyone get that? Why did they not like what Obama's doing? Because they don't agree. There's a lot of far right. They don't like, what don't they like? Cuba.
They don't like Cuba.
Okay.
yeah. So, although our dissent right now is immigration, other things could be politics disadvantages, like other things on the docket. The two critical components, though, are making sure you have a reason why Obama needs leverage to pass it. You need a reason why, if Obama angered Congress, otherwise they would not pass his agenda item. If there was a bill that was we should not, nuke everyone in the world, I feel like everyone would probably pass that, and political capital would not be critical to getting that agenda item. However, because there's, a lot of different interest groups at stake with immigration, Obama needs that political capital, or otherwise he can't work out a compromise. The other thing is making sure it has an impact. Funding for inner city schools, although it's a pretty good idea, it doesn't really get to that big of an impact to where you can weigh it against the affirmative. So you have to make sure that it gets to something that does result in nuclear war or something else that kills a lot of people, because that's good when that happens. We're going to have another lecture on politics later, so don't worry if this doesn't make too much sense right now, or if you have a lot of questions, or you heard about the politics instead once that was really complex. We'll have another time to.
For the record,
discuss that a little bit more.
This has been one of the most popular dissents at both the high school and collegiate level for the last decade. One of the most important strategies that you need to understand and execute. There have been careers won and lost on this, NDT won and lost on this,
So-
maybe you get it on this.
So why is the politics dissad, good? Why is this a dissad that people really like and why is it really popular?
It's like real life is what goes on in Congress and like we're supposed to be policymakers.
Oh, sure, that's true. But like from a strategic level, why, do you always want to make sure you have a politics dissad before you go into a tournament? Yes. Right. Everything links to politics. There's no one who likes everything, especially for engaging with other countries. You're not going to have a case snag or a specific dissad that deals with every app, but you can always come up with a reason why someone does not like what the plan does. Also, you don't have to the uniqueness kind of stays the same as long as you know what's going on the agenda, then you will always have the ability to have a good politics dissad. That about covers it.
Alright, so debating dissads. It's pretty similar to debating other arguments. I think we've already talked about what offense is. What's offense?
Something bad. A reason, yeah.
This is this morning's lecture.
Reason to vote for you.
Right, yes. And so dissads are an example of offense. Can anyone explain to me why a dissad is offense?
Because they're stating things that are wrong with the affirmative.
Right,
So they
so
vote for you.
the plan causes something bad to happen, and that causes extinction, so that's bad. Yeah, so you want to make sure that you extend the arguments that were made in the speech before. So you remember the flowing drill? And when I gave the 2NC, I was extending 1NC evidence. Remember, I was like, the 1NC Ellis card explained why China's economy would collapse. So just like that, I'm extending arguments I made in the 1NC. I don't know how much experience. When you guys start doing practice debates, I think you guys get some more experience with that. All right. So if you lose any part of the DA, you lose the entire DA. So let's talk about the China sphere of influence DA. So once someone quickly runs through the China sphere of influence, any uniqueness, link, internal, link, and impact.
Unique.
Uniqueness, China influence in Latin America now.
Yeah.
The plan causes American influence in Latin America.
Okay.
China gets upset, and China's main trading partners in Latin America, they don't have them anymore, so impact is their economy declines.
Okay. All right. So which part of that chain of events do you think makes the least amount of sense?
Their economy collapses just because they lose
Okay.
Latin America. Because they have
Does
other-
anyone think China's economy would entirely collapse because they can't trade with
I
China?
mean,
Because they're still trading.
how big of a trading partner is Latin America to China actually?
Right, okay, so that's one area that we kind of have to look at. But let's just say, generally, we are skeptical that Latin America will make or break the Chinese economy. So that's one area of the DA that you can just focus on, and if they don't win, that Latin America is key to China's economy, they lose the entire DA. It doesn't matter if China's expanding into Latin America. It doesn't matter if the U.S. influence trades off of that. It doesn't even matter that economic decline causes war. If they don't win, that trading with Latin America is key to their economy, doesn't matter about anything else, right? In this, we can take apart any other part of the DA. Does anyone think that economic decline will cause war?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because technically we're in economic decline now and haven't caused war yet.
There's a good answer. So during economic decline, what happens?
Just the economy fails and the
All right, we don't have money, right?
Right.
So when you don't have money, how are you supposed to go to war?
You're not.
Okay, so yeah, so if you don't have money to go to war and you can't go to war, economic decline doesn't cause war. Doesn't matter if China's expanding in Latin America. Doesn't matter that the U.S. crowds out with it. Doesn't even matter that Latin America is key to China's economy. Who cares if China's economy collapses? None of that will lead to war.
Granted, these aren't like truth.
Yeah,
obviously,
generally-
if you're negative, you're going to have to find answers to all of these things. So think about that. But just to prove the point that if it is proven that Chinese influence is not high now, then the plan can't make it any lower because it's already really low. So no matter how much engagement the U.S. does with Latin America, it's not going to hurt Chinese influence. So.
Yeah, if China's not doing anything in Latin America now, let's just say that your evidence is wrong about that, then the rest of the DA doesn't matter. So you guys understand how you only really need to focus on one or two parts of a DA. You don't really have to attack it on every level.
Yeah.
You want to in the 2AC just so that they have to answer everything, but you only really need to focus on a couple things. The overview is down there. There's a separate lecture about that.
No, okay.
Oh, there's one here. I'm pretty sure there's an impact after this lecture.
Alright, here's not gonna talk about this then. We'll give you a brief introduction to overviews. Well, I guess there's another lecture about this, so we'll just run through this kind of quickly. This is kind of a description of what the dissent is / why it's important. So, at the top of your speech in the block on a dissent, you just want to have a quick description of the dissent so that the judge kind of knows what's going on if they haven't, been on the topic very long. So at the camp tournament, there's going to be people who, are just from the Atlanta area who come to judge rounds, who may not be that familiar with what your dissent is. So you just want to write really quick at the top of your speech, say, right now China has influence in Latin America. The plan changes that. This hurts China's economy, causes war. But the main part of an overview is impact calculus. So this is where you compare the impacts of the affirmative to yours and why yours are bigger, better, and nastier than theirs. So the first portion of this is magnitude. So how big is the impact? How many countries does it involve? Does it go nuclear? How big it is, how many people it kills. Time frame is how quickly the impact occurs. So why does it escalate quickly? Is there historical, or sorry, that's probably, or is there is everyone really tense about the situation now? A good example of this is India and Pakistan. They tend to be, on hair trigger alert with each other, most of the time because they're constantly angering each other just because of different confrontational policies. So if something big were to really happen with them, then there's an argument that it would escalate very quickly. And then probability is how likely the impact is, or their historical animosities that make war probable. So an example of this could be South Korea. It seems likely that if the North, started, developing nukes at a much quicker pace, or the North was just sent troops over the border, there's a high probability that that war would escalate because of the fact that these two countries have, been in a ceasefire for the past, 50-something years, and they've never actually declared a truce. So apparently there's another lecture on this, so we're just going to move on for the sake of time. But overviews. What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about this a little bit. Okay, so who wants to give me an example for the China dissent of an argument why the impact has a large magnitude?
Don't say nuclear war.
Yeah, don't. That's a given. Yes.
The reason why it's a big magnitude is because previous being they're trying to basically take Latin America under their wing. If we interfere with that, that's going to make them really inferior. And have you noticed that China has already brought out weapons of weapons of mass destruction, and we don't want to take that risk with them because they have already tried to kill us.
Yeah, sure. So it would make them so mad that they would want to escalate to the nuclear level, and they've already done things that get it to the nuclear level, or that might indicate that they would go the nuclear option. Who has an example of the time frame argument for the impact to the dissent? Ty?
I guess you quick, right? Or you can check me.
Sure.
I guess.
Well, the time frame argument. There's a little bit of distinction between how quickly the link occurs and why once we usurp and once their economy collapses, why it would then escalate.
I guess it'd be within the inaction of the plan, right?
Right. Real quick question. So, of everything made here, how much of it do you think is made in China?
97%. Yeah, literally.
Right. So, if everything made in the world, how much of it do you think is imported from China?
A lot. 90%.
Right. So, what happens when China's economy collapses? How many people are affected by that?
A lot. Immediately.
Right. So, imagine if 97% of everything here was gone tomorrow because we couldn't get anything from China. Right? How angry do you think you'd be?
Very.
So how quickly do you think that war would start?
Right away.
Right?
Immediately.
Another argument you can make is not only that, but also like within the country. So China, there's a lot of protests going on, just like in different regions of China. There's a very like complex social fabric in the country, and like the argument that Royal makes, if there's a war in a country, leaders will want to like show that there's not that big of a problem there, so they'll try to get support by starting a war. So if there's like a complex social fabric within a country, they're more likely to start a conflict because they'll want to like divert from internal problems. Can someone give me an argument for the probability of the dissent? Yeah.
Well, China and Taiwan have always been like at odds about, really tense and ready to go to war. So if that would happen, they would attack Taiwan to, like, make it seem like the economic problems aren't that big,
Right.
like you're talking about. And,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, there's like hyper-nationalism towards Taiwan. China doesn't really like that it exists, so it makes it more likely that they would try to do that to rally support for the regime if there were an economic collapse. This is just kind of like explaining things in the law and stuff like that.
Okay, so this is explaining how kind of you would extend the DA. So we've extensively talked about basically the 1NC shell, which is what's happening now, how does the plan affect it, why do we care, what's the impact, right? So when you try to extend those arguments into the block, this is kind of like how you should do it. So the link debate. Remember when we talked about, we were like, what are some problems with the DA, right? We were like, oh, maybe China's economy doesn't really depend on Latin America, right? If, let's say the two ACs made that argument, no internal link. China's economy does not depend on Latin America. In the block, you want to be extending your arguments that are like, wrong. 70% of China's revenue come from inter-Latin American trade, energy, exports, all these different kinds of things, right? So you want to be extending specific arguments that you've made in the 1NC in response to what the 2AC has said. One thing that we talked about here is why Cuba is central to Chinese influence in the region, right? If the app is like, all we do is talk to Cuba. China still has the rest of Latin America to trade with, Yeah. The negative should be like, no, Cuba is one of their biggest trading partners. That's where they get the majority of their money from, You see how I'm extending my linked arguments to respond to what they're saying? So
I guess like the more explanation that you do on each part of the debate makes it more likely that the affirmative will drop an argument. So if you have 3 reasons why Cuba is key to Chinese influence in the region, just because like they're a country that is going through a lot of changes right now. China is looking to have like an oil partner in the region, so that way they can have more influence. And Cuba's a huge market. If the affirmative drops 2 of those reasons why that is true, if they're like answering the dissent in the next speech, then you can just be like, look, these other things may not necessarily be true, but they have, not answered the fact that, Cuba is a huge market for Chinese goods, and therefore a key reason why it's key to their influence in the region. So if you have the more reasons for every argument you have, the easier it is to win that the disadvantage is true, because it just shows how, right you are on each issue. And these things can be done analytically, or you should read evidence on some of the extra reasons why different things should be true. And you should do this on every part of the dissent in the block, that the affirmative answer. So on the uniqueness debate, you should be making lots of reasons why Chinese influence in the region is high, and you want to also be extending and explaining your 1NC evidence that talks about how the U.S. has kind of deserted Latin America because we think that other regions of the world are more important, which means that China can step in. So you want to be sure to explain the things in the 1NC that are in the 1NC, as well as do more explanation in the block. And you want to make sure everything's more specific. So if you have a card, let's say for the China dissent, that just says engagement with Latin America crowds out China, then the affirmative in the 2AC has a card that's like specific to Cuba and says no, it doesn't. China is not affected by Cuba or something like that. You need to be re-raising either with really good explanation, or better yet, a card that talks about why China and Cuba are like, inextricably linked in the region, that they will, that they are key partners for each other. Otherwise, the affirmative will all day, every day just be like, look, we have cards about the country we engage with. They don't have any cards about this. You should prefer our evidence because it's specific. So you want to be doing like the specific analysis of the plan, like, why I just said, like, their key market or whatever, but you also want to be reading the evidence from qualified people that just says, look, this is true.
So if the negative has a card that's like, the U.S. influence trades off with China's influence in Latin America, and then they're like, China doesn't have any influence in Cuba, the plan only affects Cuba, your DA is gone. Like, just because you have Latin America isn't as important as the fact that they have cards that are specific about that one country.
So here's some kind of next level tricks for the dissent. You really want to point out dropped arguments. So like if in the 2AC the affirmative makes a no link argument and a no impact argument, the fact that they did not answer the uniqueness portion of the dissent means that the threshold for winning the dissent is lower, right? So let's think about this in another way just to kind of simplify it. So say right now let's just say in a hypothetical debate about you getting ice cream. Say you're hungry now, the plan means that you get ice cream, and getting ice cream is good. That's not really a dissent, but that'll help clarify the point. So you're hungry now, you go get ice cream, and getting ice cream is good. If the next speech just says you won't get ice cream, then they have not answered the fact that you're hungry now and getting ice cream is good. So I guess increasing the chance that you would get ice cream is easier to win. So it's easier to win that your thought as a whole is correct. I guess that's like kind of like a weird corollary. But let's think about it in the context of the dissent. So if Chinese influence is high now, the plan crowds out influence, and influence is key to China's economy. If the affirmative just stands up and says the plan doesn't crowd out Chinese influence, they have dropped the fact that Chinese influence is high now and that influence is good. So it lowers the threshold that you have to win for the link. This is a little bit like more advanced stuff, so for some of you, like beginners, if this doesn't, make sense, that's fine. This is kind of like, for some of the older campers, but if you really want to impress some of your judges, if you're some of the older people, then making risk arguments like that, like it increases the chance of something occurring because other parts of the dissent are true, then it'll get you higher speaker points. So if the affirmative just agrees that something definitely will happen, if the dissent happens, then you have to win, then the threshold for you winning the link is much lower. All right. I know I'm gonna have questions. Yeah.
Explain the first bullet point again. Do you mean it says the uniqueness, if they drop uniqueness?
Yeah, right. So if in the 2AC they don't make an answer to the uniqueness portion of the dissent, then on the link debate you can be like, look, even if I don't do the best job here on the link and they spend a lot of time on the link, I only have to win a very, very, very small chance that they affect Chinese influence in the region because they have conceded that influence is high now and that influence causes something bad. So you have to change it based off of what's happening. So let's say they only make uniqueness arguments. Then you can be like, look, I only have to win a small chance that influence is high now because they have conceded that the plan definitely hurts Chinese influence in the region.
So if there's a 0.001% chance that Chinese influence is high now, you're guaranteed extinction because you dropped that, you kill China's economy, you crowd them out, that's not an extinction.
Right. So does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess I have a problem with the material. I understand the concept. But
Are people confused? I think generally, we understand the structure of a DA. Am I right that we understand uniqueness, internal, impact? Did we keep everyone together up till that?
Yes.
I'm sensing that we might have lost some people. Where did we start losing you guys? At the overview, maybe? Maybe the overviews, or
no, not the overview. I'm talking about the topic. When we lost me.
We lost
topic.
Yeah.
Like the resolution.
I think we just need to go through the actual
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about with the information.
Because
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not
the ice cream
familiar
example is
with
like
that's
buffet,
what
no?
I'm not familiar with
Yeah.
the packet and information. So it's kind of confusing if I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to talk to my dome and not actually.
No, no, yeah,
facts.
I totally get you.
So, I'm going to explain this last thing because it kind of applies to a lot of dissets, and then I'm going to go through some AF answers because those are kind of non-topic specific. But you guys should, if you guys have written all this down, and I think this will be posted later, go back through your notes to it, like tonight or something like that, with the packet in front of you, so that way you can understand all this stuff in the context of, the different disads. I guess this second trick is turns the case. So odds are the disad interacts with the case. So if you think about immigration reform, for example, so what countries do you think immigration reform would really affect?
Mexico.
Mexico.
News, Guatemala.
Yeah, sure. The too long didn't read is topic countries. So the countries that the plan would possibly affect, so like Cuban immigrants, stuff like that. So if the U.S. passed immigration, that would probably help our relations with the countries in that region, right? Just logically, if we allowed for more immigrants to those countries to come to us, it would look like we're more accepting of their culture, or we're more likely to engage with those countries in the future.
Wait, can someone tell me what one of the advantages to the Cuba app is?
Environment, relations, and
Wait,
economy.
wait.
Relations.
Okay, relations with who?
With Cuba.
And now what does that solve?
That solves the
It solves
immigration
Taiwan War. It's
and-
Whoa.
Does
We went
it?
from,
yeah.
Oh, so
Relations to
economic,
Taiwan.
economic.
Soft power.
okay, we're just listing things now.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Wait, hold on. Hold on.
Okay, my understanding is
It's just
that,
broader Latin American relations.
okay, we have the
Yes,
Florida
Latin America.
ecosystems,
Yeah.
Right.
am I right?
That's
Then we
what I'm
have
saying.
Cuba's economy.
Cuba's and
Taiwan
relations
relations.
is
China relations.
Yeah,
It's China relations because it
Yeah.
could
Alright, well, we're just gonna talk about Cuba's
Yeah.
economy, right?
Yeah.
If we pass immigration reform, who
It's,
does that help?
Cuba.
Cuba.
Cuban immigrants. Now, does that help their economy?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Send them back.
They can send money
But,
back.
but technically they're not letting us go over there, so it's still not solving the problem.
No, well,
But the Cuban people who come here are sending money back, which is increasing their
that's the reason why the disad solves the reasons why the app is a good idea, right? If we pass immigration reform, remember, what's the link? The plan prevents immigration reform from passing, right?
Right.
If we can pass immigration reform and we allow Cuba to send immigrants here, that solves Cuba's economy. There's no reason we need to drill with Cuba. None of that is relevant, right?
yeah.
We need to pass immigration reform. That solves Cuba's economy.
So if
Done.
we
Yeah.
don't pass immigration.
Exactly. And the buzzword for this thought is turns the case, because it means that the reasons for that the case are good are actually turned by the disad because the disad either solves them or absent the disad those things will happen anyway. So I think this will probably be covered in the overview lecture if you have more thoughts about this. But
This
we
is
need to-
much higher level disad debating.
But we need to move to AF answers. So AF against dissets. Have you guys talked about what defense is versus offense? Do you guys know what that is? Can someone explain to me what those two concepts are? Yeah.
Defense kind of defends your argument, and offense it attacks the other argument.
Kind of. So I think you know what it is, but it's kind of hard to explain. So a defensive argument is when you say the disset something just isn't true, and an offensive argument is a reason why what they have said is actually a reason to vote for you. I'll discuss this in a little bit more depth now. We're going to kind of talk about it in the context of a disset. So there's different kinds of defensive arguments the app can make for a disset, and it's just kind of putting no in front of the other things. So the first type of argument is a non-unique. So this says the uniqueness is the opposite of what the negative says. So what is a non-unique for the China disset? Yeah.
That China should not, that we should not let China get Latin America.
No.
China's not.
Right, China is not in Latin America now. Now that could take, that argument could take the form of different arguments, like China's focusing on somewhere else in the world, or other countries have a higher, influence in the world, or in Latin America. But a non-unique basically proves the point that Chinese influence is not high now for the disad. Now, no link is just like that. The plan does not affect what's going on the dissat. So can someone give me an example of a no link for this dissat?
Latin America not key to Chinese economy.
What's that?
Latin America not key to Chinese economy.
And that'd be like a no internal link. Right?
The plan
Yes,
doesn't,
the
the
plan
plan
does-
doesn't crowd out China.
Right, plan does not crowd out China. Now that argument could take, the form of different arguments that's just like China isn't cooperating with the countries that the plan affects, or that we just cooperate with China in the region rather than try to crowd them out. So I kind of forgot this because I forgot to put in the no internal link bullet, but a no internal link would just be just saying the internal link is not true. So what would a no internal link be for the China dissat?
Talk about it.
America not key to China's economy.
Right, Latin America not key to China's economy, and a no impact would be the impact is not true. So China's economy will not collapse, Chinese economic collapse does not cause war, just like what the thing that gets it to, the terminal, nuclear war impact, isn't true. Does this make sense? This is just saying the opposite of what the next said. Right?
Can anyone tell me why this isn't
Yeah,
offense?
we need to be-
Yeah.
Offense is when the disadvantage becomes an advantage for the affirmative. Now, there's two ways to do this. The first is a link term. So what you say is the dissat is going to happen now, and the app prevents it. So, for example, you would say Chinese influence is low in the region now, but the plan boosts Chinese influence. So this is saying that the uniqueness and link are on the wrong side. So you would say a non-unique and then a link term is the phrase that's used. So it says that the link not only isn't true, but the opposite is true. So that, say that the plan does something that allows for China to have more influence in the region. So it's different than no link, because rather than just saying that the plan doesn't affect the issue, it says that the plan helps the issue. So let's say, in the context of the politics, is that you say that instead of saying that the bill will pass now and the plan hurts it, you say that the bill won't pass now, but the plan is popular with Congress and it helps the bill pass. And the second type of offense is an impact turn. So you say that the dissat happening is a good thing. So an example of this is kind of what I have in the file now, which is that Chinese influence is high now, which is hurting U.S. leadership, and preventing Chinese influence, which is what the plan does, allows for more U.S. leadership, which is good for a variety of reasons. So can someone explain to me the difference between a link turn and an impact turn? Yeah.
So one turn, there's so many things that the impact are bad.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas so you get the disadvantage and advantage with the impact turn. It's how does the impact? It says the impact is good, Chinese and calm down.
Right. Exactly. Now, both of these the impact turn can have a variety of things. One of them is that, the Chinese influence versus U.S. leadership thing, but another argument would be that Chinese economic decline is good for some reason, because when China has a strong economy, bad stuff happens. I don't really want to go into that because I don't think we'll be having that debate here, but exactly right. The link turn means that the disadvantage is now an advantage, or both of these mean that, the fact that the neg read just said you were turning some part of it. The link turn maintains that the impacts are still true, whereas the impact turn says that the impacts happening are actually a good thing. Does anyone have questions about that?
No.
I know that was kind of quick.
I have a
but we're
comment.
running out of time.
You should never do those two things at the same time.
Right. Here's our don't be dumb page. You cannot link turn and impact turn, because that's a double turn. Remember what I just said, that the impact turn says the impact happening is a good thing. The link turn maintains that the impact is still true. So this is like saying something is, I think I wrote it out.
You don't cause a
Right.
good.
It would basically be you preventing something good. So it'd be like you saying Chinese influence is low in the region now. The plan builds Chinese influence in the region, and Chinese influence in the region is bad. So it means you cause more Chinese influence, which is bad, which turns it into another dissat. If that makes sense. So the neg can then concede that and use it as a turn it into a new dissat. If you impact turn it and link turn it, the neg can stand up and be like, look, you prevent U.S. influence in the region, which is good. So go away, you lose. So here's a little bit of just like app strategy against this ads. You should have a combination of offense and defense in the two-way seat. Don't double turn, but you should be making no impact arguments in addition to link turn arguments. So that way, or link, impact turn arguments in addition to impact defense arguments. So that way, later in the debate, you can pick and choose which ones you want to go for based off of like what the block says on those issues. You should always read impact defense to this ads. So you want to make sure that you don't drop an impact, or else the neg can just say, we get to nuclear war, they have, conceded that this is true, you should vote negative because of it. You want to make sure that, you can compare your impacts to theirs without having to bite the bullet of them automatically getting to nuclear war. So you should always make an argument that's like, Chinese economic decline does not cause war, or something like that. You also want to answer the tricks that the negative throws out because it'll be easier to defeat them. So if you answer turn as a case, then it makes it a lot easier for you to win because they don't, take out your case with something else. Yeah, does anyone have questions about these? I think these are somewhat like self-explanatory. Just like you should throw out lots of arguments against the disadvantage, always make sure that you do that. The last kind of like don't be dumb comment is don't read the same impact as the F. So like if there's a Taiwan war impact in the 1AC, don't read it in the 1NC, or else the F will just say that they solve and impact health becomes hard because it's like you both get to the same impact, but it's hard to compare impacts when it's the same thing that's being gotten to. You can use this to turn the case later, but you want to make sure that your impacts in the 1NC are different from what's going on the app side. Once you see a demo debate, you'll kind of see how that makes a little bit more sense, but you want to make sure that those are, distinct.
Are we F or neg?
I think we're F.
Are you guys meeting with Hackett?
Yeah.
That's on Monday.
You will not get to see us do this, but
Till
you will
Tuesday.
make it much better than us do it.
All right, any questions?
That PowerPoint had a lot of.
Wait, Peyton and who?
Austin.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, go to lunch, get out of here.
Can I see y'all too? Oh,
I'm on fire. Wow. Well, that's not.
Oh, god damn it. You got a great shot of the ceiling the whole lecture. It fell off. Oh, and I just recorded that. Wonderful.